Okay, sorry about that, Greg. Very good. We're
And
glad
I'm
you're
also on the emotional and spiritual care team that's starting up for Disaster Ministries.
exactly brand new. Emotional and spiritual care just started in January when we started interviewing volunteers. Okay. Next, let me see. J. Ray is working today. And so Steve.
Hi, Steve Hummel. I'm in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. I'm with the Penn Northeast Conference. I am serving a church right now. And my history with disasters mainly is from the response area. I was a paramedic for 18 years, nationally registered. Lived down in Louisiana and got the chance to experience 3 hurricanes and 3 tornadoes, one which put a tree through my house. So most of that has been done there. Of course, living in Pennsylvania, we deal with flooding all the time. Last flood I personally dealt with was 2011 here in Bloomsburg. Quite extensive flooding was done in the west end of town. So Penn Northeast Conference has a long disaster ministries history. And the team started back with Linda Lenhart and years ago. And so Linda retired, and of course Carl took over for a period of time, helping us out, handling both Penn Northeast and Pennsylvania Southeast. And then after we did a campaign for disaster ministries, a financial campaign we did up here in the Penn Northeast Conference, I decided to go ahead and let Bonnie Bates, our conference minister, know that I would be interested in serving if I fit the qualifications. And she was happy to receive me, and I'm not sure what I got myself into at this point. Right now, I'm just trying to get the team back together again. The list that I received from Carl got through and sent out emails, and we're trying to see who still wants to be active, who's, some of the tentatives or possible potentials have already declined. So trying to put the team back together again, trying to work on the profile, and also update the disaster plan. So those are the things that we're working on at the present time.
Great. Thank you for your experience as well.
And Leslie, one of the things that Steve didn't say that I just need to say is that he's the pastor of one of the first churches to be a willing to respond church.
That's right. That's excellent too. Thank you. Thanks for lifting that up. Hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about that today, because that was one of 2 or 3 key areas you all wanted to chat about. Very good. Thank you. So Daniel's not with us. Looks like Tom is, though. Tom Davis.
I am. Am I on mute?
You are open. We hear you.
Oh, good. So I am in New Mexico and part of the Southwest Conference. The things that we've been dealing with most recently here are fires. I'm really new to this position and having a hard time breaking into our New Mexico VOAD. Leslie, I've been promised half a dozen times to be put on the mailing list, and I still, it's not successful. Anyway, I'll keep working on that. I've got some extensive disaster experience working with Church World Service. I worked with Leslie just a few years ago with the disaster response and recovery liaisons. I was one of 6 initially, and 5, and then 3, and then none, I guess. My disaster experience goes back to 1998 with a flood in the community that I was living in Kansas, and have done quite a few things with Church World Service in the 5 years that I worked with them. Katrina being the last disaster that I worked until our fires. So
Mhm. We're glad
we're
you're
just
with us.
trying to get, just trying to get it organized and restarted again.
Yeah, you and Gloria together. Gloria is on sabbatical right now, so hopefully she'll be back. But she
Yeah.
would be focused on Arizona, and you'll be focused on New
On New
Mexico and El
Mexico.
Paso. Is that right? El Paso too?
That's correct.
Yeah,
Yeah, I keep forgetting about El Paso. But yes, El
Yeah.
Paso too.
that's good.
Yeah.
And you're a hospice chaplain as
I
well.
am
Mhm.
semi-retired hospice chaplain, working about 30 hours a week right now. So but that will calm down. I'm covering northern New Mexico and the Albuquerque area.
Very good.
So,
Thank you, Tom. Thanks for being here.
mhm.
Philomena, we're glad you're here. Would you like to introduce?
Hi, are you hearing me?
We are.
Okay. I'm Philomena. I'm here in Massachusetts, along with Fred Mead that you all know. Your question, Leslie, I had been pondering it. What brings me to this work?
Mhm.
A variety of points, but I would have to say I kind of started with the Salvation Army in their disaster ministries. I worked with them for about 14 years, and I didn't sign up to go on site, but I got to work with people long term who had been
Did we lose you? We're not hearing you now. You mentioned that you were able to work with people long term, and then we lost you. Doesn't look like you're having trouble with the mute button. So I wish we could hear you, and we will come back to you. Hopefully when you are able to just chime in anytime, okay? Maybe you can let us know with a thumbs up or something when you think you're ready to come back in.
okay.
Oh, there we go. We just heard an okay.
Well, you can move on to somebody else. I don't have very much more to add.
Well, we want to hear that. You were talking about the long-term, working with people long-term in the Salvation Army.
Yeah. So people who had been traumatized, like, so even though Massachusetts were a long way from Louisiana after Katrina, I had, maybe about 24 or so families and individuals that had relocated to our area, and work with them, getting them housing, some of them jobs, many of them maybe retraining. So that's the sort of experience that I bring to this work.
That's wonderful. Practical training on how to help individuals recovering. That's amazing. And it's a gift that we need in this team very much. So we welcome you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay. So Estelle.
Hi, everybody. I worked in Massachusetts with Philomena and Fred Mead as well. I'm a former conference disaster coordinator for Massachusetts, now living and serving in Maine, and very happy to be here. I'm also a Red Cross disaster spiritual care volunteer, and I was deployed with the Spiritual Care Services of Maine, or Spiritual Care Corps of Maine, I guess we were called at the time. We work with DHHS, and I love this work. And the conference minister is going to be leaving. We have a transitional conference minister. She was in the position, and here I am, happy to be back.
Wow, we're so glad to have you back. Wow,
Yeah.
that's great. And with the experience that you've had being a CDC, you can share that experience with the new folks here on this call today too. And for me too, because I'm new too. That's great, Estelle. Thank you so much. Okay, and so I guess it's you, Josh. Can I call you Josh, or would you prefer Joshua?
Josh is fine.
Okay.
So I don't know exactly what to expect out of all this. I am the newest pastor in the Montana Northern Wyoming Conference, and so I think some of it was, oh, we have somebody new. But I do have background in disaster. I've been nationally registered EMT for 18 years, served full-time in that capacity for quite some time, done fire and certified law enforcement for a while. So that background, and I recently married a flight paramedic and ambulance director. So I think we've got the background that I might need there. So I'm going to hopefully be able to lean on some of that as we go through. I'm just eager to kind of see what this is all about. And I have the ability, I would have to pull up my email, but we're meeting with, I'm going down to Billings this week to meet with some folks, I think from the national level, is coming to chat with us. So it'll be nice to talk with them and just kind of see where we can launch this thing. And my guess is you are right. Mark was probably tired and wanted a little help along the way. So I'm just eager to dive in and see what we can do.
That's great. Well, it's Fred Mead who's visiting, and he's a part of the emotional and spiritual care team in that Greg Briggs was mentioning. And
Wonderful.
so Fred has deployed there to meet you all and to support pastors that have been impacted, and especially in Red Lodge, and maybe even work with some of you on your next steps. So yeah, he's there until Friday. I thought Estelle might and Philomena might be interested in that, since they know Fred well.
Mhm.
Okay, so you can see on the slide that you are looking at that most of your conferences do have disaster plans. There's a little itty bitty, square there that shows you that you have a disaster plan of some sort. And you can find these plans in the MS Teams community resource. Okay, you've all been invited to that, but not many know how to navigate there. And so I thought maybe one of the things we could do is navigate to that MS Teams at some point during our call today. Let's move forward. So some of the nuts and bolts that I think we might want to start with are just, why am I getting all this stuff? And where is it coming from? Right. So there is a distribution list. It's for the conference disaster coordinators, and it's a way for me to email you directly on these kinds of events and to update you on the federal updates, the state information, and our partners. So that's your distribution list is, you've been added to those. You also are on the UCC Google group. That's a listserv that you all can talk with each other, as well as adding things to the listserv. And I update you on most of that information there too, so that you can go back and look at some of the other data that we've shared and opportunities there. And MS Teams is what I just mentioned. It's a file where our meetings are stored and where documents are stored. I have been updating, I don't know if you can see behind me. Yeah, there's piles of files that I've been going through since, I don't know, about maybe March or earlier of last year, that are historical files for your states, for your conferences. So there's a bunch in your file on MS Teams that you might want to go and take a look at. It's history of your conference and disaster ministries and technologically caused disasters, and some emotional and spiritual care too. Okay. Then we do meet monthly as conference disaster coordinators, first Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. And you provide updates for each other at that event, as well as I invite usually a partner to come and speak. And we do have a geologist who comes and gives us, or a scientist who comes and gives us updates as well. So that happens pretty regularly. We have an asset map, and it's a Google map as well. And if you want to add things to the asset map, like where your conference is located, where you're located, where the willing to respond congregations are located, where camps are located, where your kits might be stored, where you might have a tool trailer somewhere. These are all opportunities, and this helps us all see where our assets are. If you'd like to meet with me to set up the map, let me know. I'm happy to meet with you to do that. We are working on a conference disaster profile. It's actually completed, and there's a complimentary PowerPoint that goes with it. You can use as a bit of a, what do we need to be thinking about in the conference in collecting information? So this is a profile that you could put together for your conference that would give you an idea of where your resources are. And the conference plan, of course, I mentioned, if there is someone who's interested in helping me to develop a template, if you're interested in helping me develop a template for conference disaster plans, please let me know. Coral, who's with the Nebraska Conference, is interested and would like to begin that process in September. So that would be a template that would kind of give us an idea of what are the components that we all could use in our conference plans. So if you'd like to join us with that, let me know. The communication for the Global Hope e-news. Have you all received Global Hope e-news now, possibly? Maybe not everyone yet.
No,
but we
haven't.
Okay, so we want to make sure that you're on that e-news distribution. It includes refugee ministries, volunteer ministries, disaster ministries, sustainable development, where our money is going, that kind of thing. So we want to get you on that. And then
Leslie,
mhm.
can I, because I don't know the answer to the question, and it might be good for the CDCs to know the answer to the question. Are all conference offices, conference staff also on that mailing list?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they sure are.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And you can use the e-news for your own e-news, right? So if you all have conference distribution and you see an article there that you think would be good to replicate for your churches across the conference, please feel free to use that content for your own conference distribution. So what do you need to set up your disaster ministries? Let's take a moment. I did want you to know about the clothing and ID. We're working on a website that you'll be able to go to order clothing ID for disaster ministries. That's probably within the next month. I'm thinking we'll be ready for that. So what do you need to set up for your disaster ministries? What do you think you're needing right now? Just an open question to get us started.
Leslie, is there a template for the ask for recruiting team members?
There is not that I am aware of. I've not found one. Does anybody have, Carl, do you have a template for the ask?
No,
Okay. So would it be helpful to have a template? It sounds like, Estelle, you would appreciate that.
Sure, if it's already made. Yeah, that would save all of us from having to work. We could work, yes. I don't like recreating the wheel if I don't have to.
Okay.
it would seem to me that if they're willing to share, Back Bay Ministries, Back Bay Mission probably has the longest standing doing that work, and they might have a way in which they put that together. But maybe not to our purposes, but that might be one place to look.
Sure. And we can also work with our volunteer minister, to establish a template that would work for everybody. But you're asking about the conference disaster coordinator team invitation, I think.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Good. We've got a takeaway to do. Sure. While you're thinking about what do I need to get the disaster ministry started, what am I working on right now? Some of you are already well underway in getting that together. Others are just beginning to think about it. So understood. This is currently where we are spending our time. You are spending your times, let's put it that way, and I'm supporting you. With funding and volunteers, we're in the green areas for the most part. With providing technical support, I'm working with these 3 states, particularly with emotional and spiritual care. And then on the blue states, we're monitoring the disasters that have been happening across the blue state area. And the newest disasters, as Tom mentioned, one is in New Mexico, the other's in Montana, which of course you know about, Josh, and then in Oklahoma, which Kelly, you're aware of. So the federally declared disasters, or all 3 of those are federally declared. I happen to be listening into those meetings with the VOAD. And so let me just make sure you know what that is. Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster, VOAD, Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster. Each state has one, and we are a part of the National Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster. And 4 of us attended the National VOAD conference this year that is on this call today. So we did deploy or help to support your involvement in the National VOAD. So each state has the VOAD, and we encourage the UCC Conference Disaster Coordinator to serve as our representative to the VOAD. And, so you can take turns if there are 2 of you, but we listen in, we make updates if we have any, and we identify ways that we can serve the voluntary organization activities in times of disaster. Yeah, so we can talk more about that probably through the slides of the questions that we asked you all earlier. This is that asset map that I mentioned. So this, again, it's just a simple Google map, and we're able to give you access, and then you can add the dots that tell you what your resources are in your particular areas. Questions so far? Anything?
Yes, I do. Sorry, I'm not in love with being videotaped, so I keep shutting off my video. But who else are the key people we should be talking to as we start a team, if we don't already have one? Local emergency managers, county emergency managers? Are there other folks that you've identified as key people?
Yeah, let me open that up to everyone here, and Carl, possibly.
Well, I would say, if we're talking about your conference team, then who are the folks in your conference that you might have some interest in this? And it just doesn't have to be pastors. It doesn't have to be the most important church leaders you might have. It might, you might find that you have emergency managers in your congregations. You might find you have Red Cross volunteers in your congregations, and you probably do, or Salvation Army volunteers, or other kinds of folks who have an interest or passion for this in some way or another. That's one of the places I think to look. One of the things we've talked about in the past that we've done some places with some success, other places not so much, is actually to ask congregations and associations to find a disaster coordinator, and then the conference team sometimes is made up of those association coordinators or those association representatives or whatever you might do. The other thing I would say real quickly, and I'd be happy to hear what other folks have to say, is that the work of the conference disaster ministries team, that's different from the coordinator, is exhausting, complicated, and can go in all kinds of different directions. And I mean that in a positive way. That one single person or a couple of people just can't do it, and not do it right. So one of the things I would recommend is, find those people that are interested, find those people that are good, but then also figure out what is it that you want to do, and then start to recruit around those roles. For example, I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm not very good, and I have very little interest in recruiting, resourcing mission trips. That's not what I do. But that doesn't mean that the conference shouldn't do it or that the team shouldn't do it. But I, as the coordinator, just don't have a lot of interest in doing that. So I need to have somebody around me that's their passion, who doesn't want to be involved with the VOAD, or doesn't want to be involved with administrative stuff, or doesn't want to be involved with funding, but they just want to put together mission trips. So figure out what it is you want to do, and then start to find the people that do those things and do those things well, and start to build a team around what some of your goals and objectives are.
So let me jump in there, Carl, because I've been trying to figure out exactly what it is we are being asked to do or want to do since I first gotten wrangled into this. And it feels like I'm chasing a tail, because it's like, well, find your people and then talk about what you want to do. Well, I don't know what we want or need to do, and I can't find people to help me do that and so like I'm just getting really frustrated because I don't know what are we trying, like, what are even the options on what we might want to do? Like, what are the core things that we're trying to do? What are the core, and I recognize that part of it is because, I'm living in a state that doesn't have a lot of natural disasters. And so we don't have that sense of urgency already. But, when I talk with people, they're like, oh yeah, we really need disaster ministries, but I have no idea what we're actually trying to accomplish. And until I have an idea what we're trying to accomplish, I can't get people to help do it. And so I just feel like I've been spending a lot of time, and I'm getting more and more frustrated because I don't have a place to start. There's no place that's been provided that really helps dig in.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, and I guess I'll put the commercial in, hopefully the conference profile project helps to accomplish some of that. That would be, but again, it works best if you get some people. The other thing I would say, and I understand what you're talking about, because many times I think I've been there too, and I'm probably there more than I want to admit. but part of it is that, we're part of a system, and I'm kind of a systematic thinker. So I know that I serve at the pleasure of my conference minister, and therefore, and I think that's part of the deal, is for us to figure out how we fit into the ministry of the conference. So it's just not for us to invent something, but what's the conference trying to and I have a conference minister right now who I think maybe is one of the best in the country, at least for me, he is, and that's good. He doesn't let me get away with a lot of stuff, but then I know I can say to him, hey, this is something for the conference and the board to talk about. This, I don't make decisions about this stuff. This is what we need to figure out how this is working for the conference. Does that make any sense, Greg?
My conference minister hasn't really given me direction. She's on sabbatical right now. And the only thing that I have in terms of documentation are 2 resolutions from the conference in 2007 and 2012. No practical steps that come after it. And so, yeah, I don't know.
Let me just talk about the call that I think we may have here. We have a call under Global Hope, under the wider church ministries, to serve in times of disaster. The United Church of Christ is called into this ministry to serve communities impacted by disaster. And what is a disaster can vary from conference to conference. But for me right now, I'm being called in a very, very loud voice to the environmental and technologically caused disaster realm. I'm being called back into that realm after it being shut down by the United Church of Christ in 2013. Why am I being called there? Because nobody's paying attention in the disaster ministries realm across the US to that area. And families continue to suffer in not being able to cope with the chemicals, the biological, the radiological impacts in their communities. On top of that, we're called to give out funding. We have money that is collected by the United Church of Christ, by churches, by your pews who want to give. And I don't know what's happening in every single conference and every single disaster. And so your help in being able to monitor those disasters and know where the help is needed is crucial. We have Black and Brown communities in across the nation, but in particular in Detroit right now, who are suffering significant losses and no funding. So if you can begin to think about whether your community, whether your conference has disaster prone or not, that the nation is suffering from disasters in ways that we can support. And discernment is a part of the process.
Well, one of the challenges that I'm running into is that, I mean, I definitely hear what you're saying, Leslie, and I agree with that in a national setting. Having come from Michigan, I can talk a lot about Flint and Detroit as well. But my struggle is that when I, went to National VOAD and when I'm talking with people like that, I'm being, presented with a very corporate, very, pro law enforcement type mentality. And yet where the disasters that I am seeing that are going on here in Vermont, or the challenges that are coming up, have to do with racial-based police racial discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I try to organize from a disaster perspective, and it's partnering with all of these police agencies, when what we're getting defined as is like, we can't trust the police
Mhm.
Like again, I just feel like I'm kind of like spinning my wheels, and I don't know if it's because I'm not coordinating enough with our state VOAD, who, like somebody else said, I haven't been able to get a hold of yet, or if it's just that we need to ditch that whole setup and start making our own way forward and try to find other partners. But so
Mhm.
far, I feel like I'm the only one that's speaking to any of this stuff.
Yeah, I hear you. And you know, we want to open this conversation up to everybody too. We want to dig into some of these areas if possible to just for discernment purposes. But may I just say this? In terms of the partnerships that we want to pay the closest attention to right this minute, it's probably not the federal government or your state government or your county government, even though that, you know, when Estelle asked, who am I supposed to reach out to? You know, emergency management is important to know so that they're aware of your work in disaster ministries. But it's for me, and I think hopefully for you, it's the other coalition building organizations that are similarly focused, mission focused. So let's say that, you know, in your conference, the thing you want to pay the most attention to are the Superfund sites. Then you're going to be looking for the coalitions around the technological support for Superfund sites. But let's say your conference is really much more interested in what's on the screen right here. We want to establish mission trips. We want to develop volunteer programs. That's where we want to go. And if you talk to the Heartland Conference and you talk to the Indiana, Kentucky Conference that got hammered last year from disaster, they're aching for volunteers. And they're aching for volunteers outside of their conferences because they can't drum up the interest within their conferences. They need Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire, you know, to help with bringing in volunteers. So when you see it from the national perspective, it's also, how do we help our neighbors? How do we help our conferences that are in need right now for volunteers? So that's another twist on the conversation. So comments as we transition to this subject. Any comments we might have?
This is Philomena. I don't know if I'm being heard or not. And Estelle, please feel free to jump in. In fact, I wish that you would. But one of the things that when we were just the Massachusetts conference before we had this conglomerate, our small group, we sat around and we had conversations like this, you know, what is disaster ministries? How are we defining? And for me, the draw was that we broaden the definition or the scope, the understanding of a disaster, because I think for the average Mary, we're thinking disaster, you know, there's a tornado in Hawaii or something like that. We're not thinking, oh, we had, you know, 10 inches of rain in 20 minutes in one of our neighborhoods, and oh my gosh, their basements are all flooded, you know. So it can be that sort of thing. And then the other thing we did, Estelle, you were one of the muckety mucks in our conference at the time, so jump in. But we also engaged, I would call them, you know, trauma experts. I'm thinking of Greta. And so they helped, I wouldn't say so much lead the conversation, but facilitated the discussion in a way that helped us to see beyond what we were reaching for. Do you want
Yeah,
to
well
add?
said. No, well said. Yeah.
Mhm.
And we offer trainings to people. So we
Mhm.
engage with folks and we offer trainings to local church, anyone, laity, clergy alike.
Yeah.
It wasn't just natural disasters. We also did active shooters. I mean, we really did both.
Yeah, right. And those were very popular. I mean, very well attended.
Mm.
And some of the trainings people had to pay, but they still showed up. You know, they paid their own way.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, so the definition of disaster is a part of the first step in your plan. What is your plan? What is the written plan? What does it look like? And what are the kinds of, what are the concepts, programs, areas we want to serve? And maybe year one, you do one thing and you do it well. Maybe it is outreach to the congregations to make sure that everybody has access to information and a plan.
Mhm.
You know, maybe it's a call down to all those congregations, or an email blast, or a, you know, but you begin to think about, is the main focus going to be, and believe it or not, as you can see by your responses, everybody said they're not familiar at all, or not so familiar, or somewhat familiar, right? There was nobody who said, I'm extremely familiar with volunteering.
Mhm.
None of you did. 10 of you filled this out. So, you know, does that mean that we really don't want to be doing this volunteer stuff as much? Or that we need a little more training, more conversation about this? Yeah, let's think about that out loud for a minute.
Yeah, and I just also want to add another area that I think we tapped into was reaching out to congregations and encouraging them to create their own disaster plan, even something as simple as knowing, you know, where things are in your community, connecting with your local fire, police, and we were surprised at the number of congregations that didn't have a plan or wouldn't know where to go. So we might have spent maybe a whole year just doing that, working with the congregations. I remember we had some questionnaire or something we sent out.
That's great. And yeah, Steve.
Yeah, Leslie, I'm just sitting here thinking, you know, when Greg said about, you know, not knowing what to do, I'm sitting here, you know what, I'm kind of in the same boat. And I just sat down and said, you know what I'm going to do? I need to make a database for myself. I need to find out what counties are in my conference. I need to find out what churches in each county. I need to find out who the pastors are in those counties. Email them to find out if there are volunteers and anybody special in their congregations who could help. I need to find out who the EMA directors are in each county. I need to find out if there's any COVADs in each of the counties. I need to find out what resources are in each county or region, such as Red Cross, Salvation Army, et cetera, et cetera. And then make sure I'm in touch with my PA VOAD and know who my female representative is. So that kind of, for me, is kind of the steps I need to take in order to establish, when all hell breaks loose, who do I call? So at least I know I can get a hold of pastors in that area, the churches in that area, and say, okay, here's what's going on. What do you need? Hopefully they'll already call the conference minister, but this is stuff that I'm going to want to sit down with Bonnie Bates on and say, hey, this is what I want to know, so that when something does happen, we know who to call and find out what do they need, and what's going on, get an idea of what's happening in that region, and then knowing who to be able to call. Contact the EMAs, contact the if there's a regional Red Cross representative there, so on and so forth. So that's, for me, I'm kind of like Carl. I got to have a systematic way of putting this all together. So if I can get those resources, of course, going to help me with my profile. It's also going to help me to redo my disaster plan as well. because now I'm going to have all the resources and all the people and all the contacts, at least in 2022. I'm sure they will change, but at least that's going to give me an idea. And then of course, same way with, I already made the phone call to our conference office. Say, okay, where are our cleanup kits stored? Where are they? So I found out there's 2 locations where they're stored. So I already know where my cleanup kits are should something happen. So those are the kind of things that I think I need to start doing in order to laying out, because then when I have that, now I can start actually asking for volunteers. And I can ask the pastors, hey, who in your congregation has maybe some background or calling to this? And then, hopefully get a listing of people throughout the Penn Northeast Conference that I can call upon for the different areas and to develop a disaster team. That's my input.
Yeah. Makes good sense too. I have a friend who always says disaster ministries is all about relationships. Just is, it's determining what is going to happen when that church has the disaster. How will they turn to you, and what will you be prepared to help with? We have a list of 15 ways that the UCC can help in times of disaster in recovery, right? Some of this is capacity we still need to build as conferences across the nation. But yeah, that's good. Thank you, Steve, for that. So I just made a few notes about the mission trips and the volunteer programs, right? We've been at this for an hour already. Can you imagine that? Wow. So this connecting the long-term recovery groups, connecting with LTRGs, is there a mission site that's already established in Kentucky right now? There are many, and we're trying to figure out where we're going to send our partner in service. So knowing where the housing is located, how long the volunteers needed, partnering with other groups, funding, and if there's, possible funding, or if our own solidarity grants or our recovery repair grants can be used for volunteers in your conference. Indeed, it can. And we've learned that we can use that. We gave $20,000 to the Indiana Kentucky Conference just for that purpose. Set aside money so that they can help volunteers. And then equipment and materials. So this is, kind of in a quick little nutshell, that first priority that we talked about, that you actually indicated you might want to take a look at. The next one, and we won't go into this one unless you want to continue. I have a few more minutes if you want to. You could do a raise of hands if you could maybe want to stay for another 10 minutes, just a quick raise of hands. That would help me. Yeah, okay. It looks like there's just a few of you that would like to continue, so we may need to discontinue at this point. But I did want to make this last comment, and that is the willing to respond. If there's any priority that the National Office Disaster Ministries has right now, it's identifying the congregations who are willing to respond and are ready, that are disaster ready. If there's one thing you'll hear from me today, that's my priority. Because not knowing what churches are in the conferences ready and caring about disaster ministries is one of the biggest downfalls that we have right now. You look at the Southern Baptist, you look at any denomination right now who's in disaster ministries, and they've got their lists of the churches that will respond and they'll call on in times of disaster. We don't have that. There's no history of what churches responded in the past. This is the best way, in my mind, and getting the church, and let's start with your own churches. If you belong to a congregation today, there's no reason why you aren't already their point of contact. There's no reason why you're not already their point of contact. Will you please join me in being a willing to respond congregation with your own congregations? Let's have 7 new volunteers, 7 new churches join up today. Why is it so darn important? Because every time a disaster happens in the conferences, I get the panic call from the conference minister, whether they're experienced or not. And they say, I don't know what to do. I don't know what who can I reach out to? I don't even know where to begin. Sometimes they don't even remember they have a conference disaster coordinator. Yeah, it's bad. So if you can work the relationship with your conference minister and work on getting willing to respond, your network's going, I think that would be great. That's just my 2 cents. Carl, anything you'd like to add? Looks like he may have gotten stuck there. Does that look like he's stuck? Yeah, okay.
I think it's a good idea because that could help to build, a lot of the things we've been talking about. And congregations are going to respond in different ways. So this kind of gives them a way to, not everybody has to do the same or be the same. So I think that's a good idea. I think the other thing is just don't get overwhelmed kind of in general. Figure out what it is, at least where you want to start in baby bites. And then kind of figure it out. And remember that, here in Pennsylvania, we've had our share of troubles over the last 5 or more years, but we went 11 years without a federal declaration. So we had lots and lots of flooding, lots and lots of other kinds of events without a federal declaration. So it doesn't take a federal declaration to be able to be called upon to respond. So I think that's something else that we need to kind of remember too, that there are the apartment fires that put out 80 families at a time. There are other kinds of events that we might be called upon to be involved with as well. So I think that's what I would say at this point. Hopefully that's helpful, Leslie.
Yeah, thank you. Well, let's do a quick round robin since we have just 5 minutes left. Tom, any last thoughts you may have about this discussion today? Still there?
I am. Sorry, I had a carrot in my mouth. I wasn't sure you wanted to hear the crunching. No, I think this is good. I think even as one who is very experienced in disaster work, at least what I did it full time for a while, it's a bit overwhelming trying to manage our disasters and continue to manage one's own personal life. So this is it is an overwhelming task that we've begun to engage in, and
Yes.
I think just one little piece at a time is exactly right.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Helpful. Josh, have we scared you?
No, it was good information to gather. I'm sure I'll think of a few things, but then I can bring those up this week as I have a chance to meet Fred. And did you send out a way to get to that MS Teams
I did.
folder? I was trying to search my emails and I don't know, maybe I didn't get it, but if you could re-forward it to me, maybe that would be helpful.
Yes,
I'd
it's
like to take a look
probably
at it.
coming to you through MS Teams or maybe through the UCC MS
Okay.
Teams. So it may not be coming through Leslie.
Okay, and I guess I haven't seen anything pop in my email yet, but
Okay.
outside of that, it was good information. And
We have much more to share. I've got many slides that we didn't even touch today. So we'll do this again in 3 months. That gives you time to think through this conversation and to have a few CDC, monthlies under your belt and that kind of thing. So thanks, Josh, for your participation and willingness to serve in this way. Yeah, Estelle, thoughts as we
Sure.
conclude?
Hi, sure, I'll start this again. Yeah, a couple of things. I also didn't get an invitation to the MS Teams thing, so I would love that. I wonder if you're going to share the PowerPoint or at least the slides we've seen.
I will.
That would be awesome. And I know that at least when we were Massachusetts, there was, Philomena, you can speak to this, but there was a page on the conference website. If you know that conferences have pages dedicated to disaster, that might be helpful for some of the newer folks. And as we build teams, that would be helpful.
Sure. So I did a PowerPoint for the conference disaster coordinators meeting, and each one of you have a slide. And on that slide, I've outlined who has what, if you have a plan, if you're on the website, if you have a team, all of that. So
Right.
if you need me to kind of organize that a little more by category, I could probably create something like that for everybody, if that would be helpful. Or I could just send you the PowerPoint. You could take a look at each slide for each conference.
Whatever works for folks. I'm just thinking if it's already out there, it would be helpful for folks to see, I think, myself included.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. We're really glad you're here. Thanks for your energy here today. Let me see, Philomena.
I'm good.
Yeah, okay, we appreciate your ideas here today too, your reminders actually about the things that you've done in the past, reaching out, creating and serving disasters as they occur. That really super helpful. Thank you. And Kelly?
I kind of like I think it was Steve maybe that said he needs like the methodical approach to getting things done and a list. I think that's kind of how my brain works also. And so trying to go from infinity of what could we do to what's practical, what can I do, et cetera. Kind of generating that list while we were on here. I applied for the Kansas VOAD. I know I've been connected to them through email, but I don't know that I've actually applied to like be a member, and what does that look like? And your list of who is involved in all these counties, even that seems a little overwhelming for a couple of big states, but just kind of helping try to narrow things down. And my invitation as I reach out to pastors in their churches and in our areas, like, do you already have something in place? If so, how do we coordinate this? And I don't think our area, because it's the person who was doing this before was also volunteer in retirement, mostly managed flood buckets and cleanup buckets. So how do we do more than that? But to determine what that disaster is for our area, of course, there's the really obvious ones. Tornadoes and ice in our area is really obvious, but those other not so obvious areas and connecting the active shooters and all that, because so many of our congregations are so open and affirming in our area, I think we could be a pretty significant target. So that's also kind of been a concern of mine, but just kind of helps to have these things named and hear that I'm not the only one. And maybe how do we trade our resources and our ideas of what are some of the things that we're looking at.
Great. Yes. Maybe I can work too on kind of getting that basic list together. That first step kind of list, based on what you said, Steve, and kind of the follow-up here of your ideas. Yeah, because it seems like the sense of overwhelming is kind of permeating and probably permeates the entire CDC network most of the time, right? Yeah. So we don't want it to be that way. We know it's volunteer. We know you have real jobs and real lives, and this is an addition, and we appreciate that. Thank you so much for giving the time that you have and building this network. Thank you. Well, with that, any other closing thoughts before we close today?
The only thing I just want to reiterate when you were talking about the willing to respond, that really was kind of the impetus behind getting to know who the pastors are in each of the counties. And then from that, it was like, oh, what counties do I have in my area? And, what churches are there and so on and so forth. So yeah, the willingness to respond, I think, is going to be key to helping us build a coalition for our areas. And yeah, I thank God I only have 10 Northeast Conference. I can't even imagine having the entire state of Kansas. That would blow my mind. But anyway, God bless those who do. And hopefully, doing something methodical thing. At least I can pick off little pieces of this and do it one at a time. So that's definitely going to be helpful. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Okay. All right. Well, we look forward to meeting again on October the 25th. Until then, I'm a phone call away anytime. I know Carl would take your call at any point. And let us know how we can help you. Okay.
Oh, and I would just say real quick, I also enjoy hearing from my CDC colleagues. And so if you guys publish a newsletter or have things that you put out in the media, just let me know. I mean, I'd love to get that stuff and keep up with what's going on out there.
Yeah, me too. That's good. Very well. Okay. Thank you all. Blessings.
I can't figure out where the red button is, Leslie.
Everybody okay? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
When you get a
See y'all
chance,
later. Yeah.
yeah, when you get a chance, reach out to me if you've got a few minutes.
Oh, sure. Would you like to just remain here on the call?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay, good. Let me just stop the recording. Yeah.